Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Monin.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 126. And this episode, Matt and I wanted to look a little bit at the concept of the joke character within video games. That takes a lot of different forms and shows up in a lot of different things, particularly fighting games and anything with a large roster, but really no genre is immune.
Yeah, typically joke characters will be introduced as like an alternative or a gag or an April Fool's joke even sometimes that then comes to fruition. That happens a lot more in modern times where like Blizzard will announce some goof in World of Warcraft and the next thing you know, that character is an NPC in the game. And like talk a little bit about not only why these characters happen or are created, but then a little bit about what happens when they aren't just a joke anymore, when they become the Dan Hibickis of the world, where they're in every single Street Fighter game after that, and people actually play those characters professionally in tournaments. And like how like even characters that maybe were intended as a joke then end up becoming fan favorites, because I think that's just as interesting as the introduction of these joke characters in the first place.
Absolutely. I mean, especially because, yeah, I think there is a predilection towards loving the underdog, as it were. I don't know if I would call Waluigi a joke character, something of a character of necessity that became a little bit of a joke and a meme, but not necessarily a joke character. Waluigi wasn't made to have abysmal stats or really weird mechanics or anything like that. It was just Wario needed a doubles partner in Mario Tennis.
Right.
And yet still, many have latched onto Waluigi, myself included. And I don't have a rhinestone Waluigi hat for nothing, folks.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think in a lot of other games, there is a impulse to take on the challenge. Think of how many games out there have all sorts of self-imposed challenges that people take on. You know, there's always that joke, a weird controller comes out and you think it's going to be 3 days and someone's going to have a video of themselves beating Dark Souls with it.
Right.
Whatever it is. And kind of a joke character is an equivalent of that, especially in something like a fighting game. Like, I think Dan Hibicki is an excellent starting point for this.
Yeah.
To be defeated by the joke character is such a wonderful flex on somebody. And Dan Hibicki as a Street Fighter character was created as a sort of dig at, I believe it was King of Fighters.
Right.
And it was sort of a imitation of an imitation idea. So you get Dan Hibicki, who can do the Hadouken that, you know, Ryu and Ken and Sakura can do, except it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And practices basically a really crappy version of the same martial arts, and it's his own thing. And is sort of a Steven Seagal design that is just very much about being the coolest. And this carries through in all of the different genres that Street Fighter has gone. My first exposure to Dan Hibicki, because I'm not a huge fighting game person. I enjoy them, and I like them for their lore, certainly. But I've never been like a diehard follower. Dan Hibicki, my first exposure to him really was Puzzle Fighter.
Nice.
Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. There are your 8 characters that you can choose. I think Akuma is also one that you can unlock. And they all, something specific about them. They do have some stats, but also in that competitive puzzle way, you drop different colored gems onto your opponent, and everyone has different colors, and they have timers on them. So after a couple of turns, they turn into gems. So first they block you, and then they could be taken away. So it could possibly be turned on you in combos and things like that. So they're usually like different colors, or they don't quite match up. Dan Hibicki's attacking gem pattern is all one color. It is all red. It doesn't matter. It is all red. So, you know, you fill them up with gems, in about 3 turns, they can just combo you right to death. And it's hilarious. And I would imagine also, I haven't done a ton of multiplayer games of Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, but I imagine losing to Dan is pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, I believe Dan made his debut in Alpha.
That sounds about right. It's certainly that time period.
It was that time period. It was either Street Fighter 3 or Street Fighter Alpha. It was one of those two. But I knew of Dan, but I come and go with Street Fighter. When we talked about fighting games with Hans, like I grew up playing them, especially Street Fighter 2 Turbo a ton. And then I fell off for a while. I played Alpha a bit in the PlayStation era. And then I didn't really get super into Street Fighter again until it made its grand return with Street Fighter 4. In Street Fighter 4, I bought on the 360 and played a ton. And one of the characters that I got really good with was Dan, because in Street Fighter 4, and they had this in the other stuff, but with the 3D graphics and like the graphical upgrade that Street Fighter had gotten with that version, like the super combos were very cinematic, and Dan's were stupid and great and a lot of fun. And so I just got good at them because he was fun. And like, he still did the short range Hadouken. He still did a weird and wonky spinning kick, but like they were all kind of lagged in a way that you could time them just like anything else. It was just learning the timing. And like, he ended up becoming a favorite character, and he's continued to be in the game since. I'm pretty sure he's in 5, and I think he's been teased in 6 already. But like, it's interesting because he definitely wasn't intended to be like that. I'm sure they knew that people would learn to play well with him, because fighting game enthusiasts, if they stick to their guns, they can master any character they want. And so it's just very funny to me that now he's kind of got a fandom, and he's kind of also like a goof on another competitor to Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. He's definitely a goof and a rip on Johnny Cage, and that like conceited, kind of self-centered sort of martial artist character, and like cares more about autographs than fighting. And I love that this one character takes digs at so many other franchises while actually now having evolved into a really great character to play as.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I actually hadn't thought of the Mortal Kombat connection as well. Whether that's intentional or not, that you're right. It works.
Yeah.
And it's funny that sometimes what would be a joke character stays a joke.
Right.
But Dan Hibiki is an excellent example of, in this conversation, and a great, prime example, because he was allowed to evolve. They've never made him a top tier character, at least not intentionally. But there's this very interesting bell curve where fighting games in particular, but a lot of different genres, certainly competitive ones and online ones and multiplayer, there is always a tier list and a meta about choosing your characters, about the strategies you use, the get good of it all. And you want to use the best. And you definitely don't want to use any mid-tier stuff unless you're trying to show something off, you're going for an interesting strategy, but the general idea. But then that kind of comes back around the other side, and it's win with the crappiest one. And then sometimes something with an active community or active releases like the Street Fighter series, for lack of a better thing of active releases. I mean, there's updates now. You have, there've been for a while. I'm just not up on it. So it always just seems like it's coming out of nowhere to you or I, Matt. But over time, it becomes like, all right, no, we'll support them a little here, a little bit there. On the flip side, too, are not an example of a joke character, Waluigi. I don't ever want good things for him. I love him because he should not get his own game. That's part of his charm. And I think there are other joke characters that follow that same kind of, no, we love them because they suck. Don't you dare make them better. How dare you?
Yeah, I mean, a really great example of that, not in a fighting game, is actually Tingle from the Zelda series. Tingle was introduced, I believe, in Majora's Mask, right?
That sounds about right. And I did confirm Dan did debut in Street Fighter Alpha. You were quite right.
I have my moments. But like, Tingle was definitely a gag, this goofy character who's now reprised his role in many a game, even getting a full-featured character in the Hyrule Warriors games, got his own Japanese-only like adventure RPG.
Rosie Rupee Land, yes.
Yes, on the DS, which like, it's just funny to me, like these characters that gather fervor and fandom in the year of memeing, the year we were living in, the year of our Lord 2022. Morbius, a very bad Sony villain-featured movie, just as of when we're recording, got re-released into theaters because someone had been streaming it for like 24 hours straight every day on Twitch, and people have been watching it and like making memes and making jokes. And so, of course, the studio was like, well, we didn't make any money, but with all these memes and jokes, people will surely go see this movie. And like, we're going to get a sequel for this stupid movie because people think it's funny. And like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just interesting to me in meme culture how these kinds of characters exist. I mean, one of my favorite characters to get a glow up from gag character to actual badass, and is in a game world full of joke characters, because when you're making enough of these things, you need some jokes. It's Pokemon. Pokemon has had tons of joke characters on different levels for different reasons. As of when we're recording this, they just showed the news trailer for Scarlet and Violet, and we have Lechonk, who like is the best little pig ever, but like is clearly a gag. But
I don't know. There's been some pretty powerful picks.
But like Farfetch'd is a character who, he's a bird carrying a leek. He was obviously meant to be a gag and a joke and for funsies. And then in Sword and Shield, we got Sirfetch'd, a knight character with like an onion sword. And it's come full circle. And I think just about any character in any game can have its fans. If those fans are vocal enough, we might see more of that character. It won't just be a one-off, one-and-done thing.
Yeah. Farfetch'd in particular, I have a lot of knowledge and strong feelings about Farfetch'd. I mean, even the Japanese name for Farfetch'd, which is eluding me at the moment, is based off of a Japanese idiom that sort of means stupid fortune.
Yeah.
Like a duck approaches bearing onions. Like, look, a delicious meal has approached you. Oh, and it brought its own sides.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And the fact that it's called Farfetch'd, there's so many levels of unintentional goofing on Farfetch'd because you got it in the original red or blue, you traded for it, and you couldn't rename traded Pokemon. So you can never have a Farfetch'd named Farfetch'd. They were all named Ducks. D-U-X. Why? And due to the nature of the apostrophe, that actually messed with a lot of different languages of Pokemon while trading between them in later generations. They shot themselves in the foot with that. They designed all of this. This wasn't a thing that they discovered. Well, they discovered it in terms of coding. But yeah, it was definitely a Pokemon that it never got the Mega Evolution, never got a Pre-Evolution. And so many other Pokemon went in other directions with that. Other Pokemon of that same generation that lived in a similar way, your Mr. Mimes and Jinxes, they got baby Pokemon. They got other forms. They were certainly powerful in their own right, in their own way. Lickitung, the same way. Farfetch'd languished, for 7 generations before finally getting that. And I think there's a ton of other Pokemon. I would almost call them gimmick Pokemon as well.
Yeah.
Because in the same way that a fighting game, you have a massive roster, who's going to sweep the Elite Four with a Love Disc, which has one of the worst stat spreads of any Pokemon. And they find different ways to make them utter jokes in one way, but incredible in another. There's the Pokemon Sunkern, which is another one that I think that one actually does have the worst stats out of any Pokemon. But the Pokathlon for Heart Gold, Soul Silver has the best stats. Or the better potential. Even its evolved form, Caps. Sunkern is incredible in Pokathlon. And we all care so much about Pokathlon.
Obviously.
But some do. And I'm a big fan of watching YouTube videos that are people doing weird challenge runs. So watching someone try to beat, I believe it was Pokemon Platinum, the Gen 4 game, with a Delibird, which is basically a Christmas penguin.
Yep.
It gets a move called Present that does random damage and sometimes heals your opponent. Have fun with it, everybody. In games like Pokemon or other creature-catching, party-building games, fighting games, or any of those, it enriches the game experience to have those there. When it's something where you can look at synergy, like even digital card games, there are things that you look at and you go, that's terrible. That's stupid. Why would anybody do that? Then you start finding ways that it matches up. And then you start building it, and it creates a new experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, also with Pokemon, like, consider that in Gen 1, one of the earliest Pokemon you see is a gag for most of the game until you realize that it's true potential, which is, of course, Magikarp. Magikarp that we still make fun of to this day because, frankly, he deserves it. But, like, even in the anime was a gag, but then when you piss it off, like, I remember in Detective Pikachu, which we talked about, like, there's a Magikarp. They freak out. They're like, oh, it's just a Magikarp. He kicks it, and then it evolves into a Gyarados. Like, I love when everyone's in on the joke, and something like Magikarp is definitely one of those kinds of Pokemon that it's an absolute badass once you evolve it, but to start is absolutely awful. Whereas, like, Goldeen, who is also kind of particularly awful, is, like, beautiful and luxurious and is not considered a gag in the same way, which I just think is very funny.
Yeah, it was a bit of a joke in the anime when Misty would always call it out and it wouldn't be in water, so it would just flop around saying its name.
Yeah.
I do wonder about the definition of joke character on this because I don't know if there is an official one. I doubt there is. But if it's something like Magikarp where, yeah, you get a little fleeced, but it's because you need to put 15 difficult levels into that Pokemon and then it becomes something incredible. And maybe this is that kind of thing where the definition can be fluid. I feel like Far-Fetched is a bigger joke, or Love Disc, or Spinda, or any of those than like Magikarp is, because of the fact that if they got any sort of redemption or any sort of support, it was years and releases later.
Right.
I mean, Magikarp is also one where, no, we all had that experience. And I think it's notable enough that it should be spoken of here. Yeah, we're like, oh man, only 500 Poké Dollars or whatever it was for this Pokemon? Cool, Magikarp. That sounds great. It wasn't great.
No.
It was not. Also, Gen 1 Pokemon has, the game itself, the generation itself, has so many weird corners. It's why I keep going back to it. It's not a great game, but it's a good game and it's notable.
For sure. And I think like what's really interesting about joke characters is, I mean, there are tons of other characters that we could talk about who like started as a joke, possibly grew, or just kind of fell off. I mean, like for fighting games, I think of Kuma also, the bear from Tekken, I believe, is where he debuted.
Yes.
Absolutely just a gag. They wanted you to be able to fight as a bear. And now Kuma has been in almost every iteration of Tekken, as far as I know.
I think Kuma has been in every iteration of Tekken.
Yeah.
Well, even more than Kuma, I think of in Tekken 3, they had that tie-in where you had Gon, the little dinosaur.
Yes.
And even more than that, Dr. Boskanovich, who is not a fighter, is an old scientist man that Yoshimitsu works with.
Yeah.
That you can't unlock him until you fight him after beating one of the modes like 4 times in a row. And his main difficulty is he never stands up straight. So any high attack, any punch does nothing. And he just sort of has these weird erratic stances. He moves around like he's drunk or he is exhausted or whatever it is. And unlocking him was so difficult when I was a kid. Like, I got to him. I was so nervous. He was the last character to unlock. He was an utter joke. There was no, like, oh, man, this is like unlocking Akuma in Street Fighter. This isn't, Mewtwo at the end of Pokemon. This is just an old man. This is just an old nerd. Why can't I hit this old nerd? There's a lot of reasons why we can't hit old nerds. But this one in particular was vexing. I did unlock him. It did nothing for me but my sense of completion.
Sure. But like also alternatively, I think it's important to talk about characters who kind of become jokes, but a joke that everyone's in on. I mean, like the most famous case, especially in the more recent RPGs that he was in, Luigi, who is a character who for the most part was just kind of a copy of Mario until later on. Once the Luigi's Mansions game came, and of course, more famously, the Mario and Luigi games, starting on the Game Boy Advance, he literally became the butt of a ton of jokes. Like, Bowser didn't know his name, he was a coward, he often fell over, made mistakes, and like, in that essence, the character is not necessarily a character who's created as a joke, but then becomes within the narratives the butt of a lot of jokes. Because in the 3D Mario games, your Mario Galaxies, your Mario Odyssey, it's not really the case. Luigi is kind of just Luigi. He's always got his cowardly kind of vibe, and like in the cartoons was a coward as well. But like you only really see it in those story-driven games. And I think that's really fascinating when a character who kind of was a nothing, just a palette swap, became a joke that you could laugh at and like enjoy in that kind of weird video game comedy way.
Yeah, now the way that a character created out of necessity, that what do we do with them? Well, but that becomes, a joke in story, not necessarily a joke in gameplay. Which are interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like Waluigi is similar to that, right? Like Waluigi was, like you said, created for Mario Tennis and then gained this notoriety, and they made him as goofy as Wario was. Wario, another character who debuted as pretty kind of creepy and serious in 6 Golden Coins, and then also like became a treasure hunting, obsessive, farting gag character. And like, think about his moveset in Smash Brothers. It involves farting, running people over, biting them, eating them, like all kind of jokey, goofy, ridiculous moves. I mean, he's kind of the epitome of a joke character in a fighting game. Like his fart does more damage the longer you hold it in. And like, I think that's really interesting because he kind of evolved into that, because he absolutely in 6 Golden Coins on the Game Boy was not that. He was just this creepy, distorted, even bigger Mario with with weird pointy ears.
It's funny because I might argue that he's not quite a joke character. He's a little bit of like a childish character or like
Okay.
a kid character. Like that. This is for 5-year-old boys, as far as market research goes. Oh, they love the big guy who does the farting and the bite. He's got a motorcycle too. The kids will love it. And I think too, because that was an evolution of his character, and it's one that's certainly not dignified.
Right.
And a character who wants treasure and fame and creates basically a weird game company for 3-second mini games. Yeah, no, it's not a person to look to for advice or life lessons. Wario is not a role model. I'm gonna put that down here. Wario is not a role model.
You heard it here first, folks.
Wario is not a role model, and I guess because too, compared to what is important in Smash Brothers, there are other characters that I would put as seeming jokes, like Pichu.
For sure. A character that damages itself as it attacks.
Right. And in a game that it's not about where your life bar is, it's getting knocked off. And so how much your character weighs matters. And Wario is a big, stout dude.
Yeah.
And Pichu is, if not the lightest, one of the lightest characters. But there again, there's something joyful in choosing a character you identify with in games like this. I pick Waluigi in just about any game where I'm allowed to be Waluigi.
Fair enough.
He's who I race with. He's who I play Mario Party or anything like that. Because also sometimes you choose these things and you choose them for chaos.
Right.
My favorite Smash Brothers character is Mr. Game & Watch.
There it is.
Yep. And whether or not he is a joke is up in the air. One might argue that he is a joke character. This is where it gets a little murky.
Right.
Because again, Nintendo's a little whimsical, and there's no clear look on things. You play, was it Marvel vs. Capcom 3 that had box art Mega Man?
No, they put him in Tekken, I think, or something.
There was a game with Mega Man, and you could also choose to be the Mega Man that is based off of the American NES box art of Mega Man that just looks kind of like a middle-aged guy with a gut in a yellow and blue jumpsuit with a helmet and a handgun.
It was Street Fighter. Street
Fighter.
Fighter added him as a playable character.
It's Capcom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it was either Street Fighter 4 or 5. Oh, it was Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Okay. That's why
Yeah.
that makes sense. So something like that, it's very clear. No one is meant to take this seriously. Right. You are allowed to. You are not intended to.
Right.
Smash Brothers is a little more of a, here's all our action figures. We're going to make them fight. So it becomes murkier. And I actually am very curious what some people, listeners, which do you consider any characters in Smash Brothers to be joke characters? I mean, Game & Watch feels a little like Dr. Boskonovich from Tekken 3, where it's very much the last one you unlock.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this isn't unlocking the secret best one. It's just, here's a 2D guy whose noises are very loud and throws bacon, and his forward B smash is a random number hammer. Maybe it insta-kills. Maybe it does nothing. I love that hammer. And I've definitely been humiliated by people playing Pichu. Yes. Or Jigglypuff using the sleep move, or any number of other characters that I'm not thinking of right now. You know, we've all been beaten by ice climbers or whatever other ones that you look at and you go, that's a joke. They're not jokes, but they are. But they're funny.
I mean, I think it depends on the intent, but you're absolutely right. I think it's all like Dan Hibiki is unarguably, I guess that's a word. If not, it is not.
Indisputably.
There you go. That's why they pay you the big bucks, or at least the medium bucks.
Aha.
But like, he was created as a gag, like, without a doubt. Same for Farfetch'd and a bunch of other Pokemon, but it gets murkier. I mean, you think about the Tony Hawk series, like, think about the hidden characters you unlock: Spider-Man, Wolverine, characters who, on their own, in isolation, are not jokes, but being able to play as Gene Simmons at a skateboarding game is a joke. It's a gag. And I think that kind of stuff is also within this realm and really fascinating. Think about how in the Resident Evil games, you could play as Hunk, which is kind of like that no-name masked Resident Umbrella soldier.
Special ops guy, yeah.
Yeah. Or in, like, I believe it's Resident Evil 1 proper, as well as the remake, you can play as the Tofu Bar.
That's all in the second one.
That's the second game.
Yeah,
both
in
versions
Resident
of the
Evil
second game.
2, you can unlock the fourth survivor, which is the mini game that introduces Hunk, where you need to get from the basement all the way to the roof, and then you beat that and you unlock the tofu survivor.
Yeah, and that's a complete gag. Like, you're literally a sentient piece of tofu. Have fun.
Yes, you don't get guns. You only have a knife. And I think it very much came from the fact that what is the block of tofu wearing a beret, wielding a knife, it simply was based off of the hitbox.
Yeah.
It's the hitbox detection for other characters. And they just went, now you're tofu. And how do you know your health? You turn redder and redder. And the ending for it is the same exact ending photo for Hunks, except now he's eating tofu soup in the helicopter.
Yeah.
So that's the fate of tofu every time. And yeah, that indisputably a goof.
Yeah.
I love tofu for that.
It's really fascinating how humor is utilized in games. And like, we've talked about The Messenger and other games, Shovel Knight, that utilize comedy within the game. I think that's a very different story because, like, thinking about the Tofu Man or Hunk, the story isn't a joke. Like, it's still those games. You're just playing as goofy characters. Like, look, there are no explicit gag characters in Dead Rising. However, Dead Rising, especially the first game with Frank, when you can wear a Servbot head and no clothes in serious cutscenes, it becomes a gag. I'm telling you, when they're like speaking serious dialogue, look it up on YouTube. And Frank West, I believe his name is wearing the Servbot head, and like they do one of those turn and reacts, and he's just got that big smile. Like, you'll lose it. Like, it's just goofy and it's great.
Because sometimes you cover wars and sometimes Miss Tron needs something.
and like, I love that. Also, you can create gag moments and gag characters based on what the game provides you. Those kinds of action games are no stranger to that. And I think, look, there are definitely gag characters all across Shovel Knight, but the problem is, or not the problem, the thing is, like, the Troop King, the giant applefish, I can't remember what his name is.
The Truple.
The Truple is a gag, clearly, but not played for laughs. It's 100% serious. They're like, it's goofy, but like, it's played straight. A lot of Shovel Knight is, but I think that's what makes those goofy gag characters even better. I mean, Plague Knight is kind of played as a goof in the Shovel of Hope story, but when you take control of him in his own story, which is kind of an alternate reality, it's actually pretty serious and heartwarming. And like, I think as these things get more complicated and as games get more advanced, the joke character can be more than just, hey, here's a funny thing. You can have more of a dynamic to it and do more interesting things with it.
Yeah. To me, where that boundary lives and where that gets interesting is because something I love about video games is it is very much about the interaction of the player and the world that is created. The notion of you're not watching a movie, you are directing the film as you are the actor within it as well. Right. And so whatever we decide is the boundaries of the world is what we have. We live in a world where you raise your shovel high and this is a totally legitimate weapon. Great. The people worship this giant combination apple trout. Fantastic. Cool. But now we've given them big heads. Well, that's just ridiculous. There's these weird lines. You know, is Spider-Man a joke character in Tony Hawk? Arguably, because these are meant to be celebrity or real skateboarders. Is Ollie the Magic Bum from the Tony Hawk series a joke character? Almost inarguably. I guess it's that sort of thing where you just kind of go, all right, I just want you to tell me what the boundaries of your ridiculous made-up world are. I will accept them. I will enjoy them. And if you put things outside of them, I will understand them for what they are. Yes, I doubt that they're selling Servbot heads in the mall during Dead Rising, but you can unlock them, and you can get them. And I think of things like Big Head mode in older games, where it's just like, this isn't the world of the game. Why do all these mobsters have giant heads? Because video games.
Well, it's funny you say Big Head mode, and that reminds me of GoldenEye 64, which one of my favorite games of all time. I know it probably doesn't hold up that well now, but if they ever release it on the Switch Online, I will absolutely play it. But there was a joke character in that, too, actually. Oddjob and Jaws are both gag characters. Jaws is slow and big, and Oddjob is the smallest a character can be and can throw his hat. And like, is hard to hit. But both of them were characters that people fought to pick when I played with my friends because they just wanted to torment you.
Right.
It's
Or
great.
it was a civilized agreement. No one plays Odd Job.
Yeah.
Basically. And yeah, it's again, we're back to like those random characters. I wish I could remember the name. It's a boss character from the Bloody Roar series that I wasn't super into Bloody Roar. I played it a little bit when it first came out, and I mostly know this through other journalists and other videos and other things. Because the Bloody Roar series, you are fighters that turn into like animal forms and are like big vicious things. And this character turns into a penguin.
Amazing.
Not a giant penguin, not a vicious penguin, not even a large normal, just a regular ass penguin.
Perfect.
And that meant it was difficult to hit, and it attacked with its flippers, and it could combo like crazy. It apparently actually kind of dominated a little bit for a while, but it was a penguin. Here we are. And so you can put those within the world as well. I think of something, speaking of, I'm looking through my list here, games that have a wide character roster, but have, again, take advantage of that, are the Lego games.
Yeah.
And Lego Star Wars, you could be all kinds of characters, fast, slow, Jedi, whatever. You could also be the Gonk droid.
Yep.
Which is the big walking battery thing that was named because it makes a gonk,
Yep.
gonk sound. And it would frequently fall over. It was slow. I think all it had going for it was nigh indestructible.
Yeah.
And you could just put that in there. And in multiplayer games, maybe you're holding everybody up, or maybe you just kind of get pulled along and it's like, I want to be the Gonk droid. Yeah, that's a great thing for like the youngest sibling who would have died anyway to be playing. Now you're not losing bits.
Yeah.
But it's like, just come with us, just be the Gonk droid, Gonk. Yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah, and the Lego games were notorious for having gags like that because they literally made almost every character playable. And like thinking in that way and like going back towards our like, are these characters jokes or do these characters tell jokes and are part of jokes? You know, Deadpool, especially in modern media, thanks to everyone's favorite, most handsome man, Ryan Reynolds, like Deadpool had already been having a resurgence before the movies came out, but it's only grown. And like in the most recent Marvel Ultimate Alliance, the third game, like in the other games, he was featured and had like small moments where he commented about being in a video game. But in Ultimate Alliance 3, there's a whole area where you're in the X-Mansion and he has a whole taco night moment. And like, it just becomes the mimetic version of Deadpool that we're so used to. But when you play as him, he's got cool moves. He's still like a really cool character, but like is clearly also a gag and was put in the game to be funny and be a gag because he has become Marvel's kind of like fourth wall breaking goofball. And I think that those characters have their place too. And I think characters like Dan Hibiki walked so characters like that could be in the spotlight and run. I mean, Deadpool got his own game in the Xbox 360 generation, and I really liked it. Was it great? It was negligible, but it was fun and ridiculous. And Nolan North, of course, as Deadpool, was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a very passable game with incredible personality to it.
Yeah. And like, I just love how we've kind of grown that. And like, even like if we like JRPGs, I feel like it's even harder to find joke characters because it's just the writing is usually so in depth that the jokes, like you could look at Ketchi, also commonly called Kate Sith in Final Fantasy VII.
You had it right the first time. Ketchi, yeah.
Look, I called him Kate Sith for so long because I didn't know how I constantly get made fun of in a Discord server with friends of mine because I call Ryu because who was around to correct me? There was no voice acting in these old games, you know?
Hey, from NES to Xbox, it was Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah. But Ketchi, like in the beginning part of that game, just seems like a goof, seems like a gag. And it's only until they reveal what I'm not going to say, because there are new fans to that oeuvre, like that he's not. There's more to that character than just goofs and being a stuffed animal, a cat riding a stuffed animal, more specifically.
Yeah, which is especially something that sticks out for a game with a tighter cast of characters like that. You play a series like Suikoden, that's one I've never had pronounced for me, nor have I gotten agreements on it, where by its nature and conceit, there's 108 characters you can get. Not all of them are going to be stellar combatants.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to be useful in other ways, and some of them are just going to be goofs. Or the recently re-released Chrono Cross.
Yes.
where Chrono Trigger, Matt, you like Chrono Trigger, right?
Oh, yeah, it's all right.
A little bit.
Little bit.
And it's absolutely fantastic, superlative, incredible RPG, and one that I was so delighted to share with my spouse. And one of those where I'm like, oh my God, please like this game. It's okay if you don't like this game, but I really need you to like this game. She loved it. And one of the things that Sarah prefers in RPGs is tight cast of characters, not having to deal with a lot of switching around. Can I have my favorite party and deal with it? And if I have to switch it up, you're not going to penalize me for ignoring characters kind of thing.
Right.
Came out of it like, this game's incredible. Does it have a sequel? Yes.
But
you know that thing you like about the number of characters? Chrono Cross, total opposite. 44 characters. Some of them are absolutely not serious characters. One of them's a dog. One of them is a possessed doll. One's a skeleton. And you know what? In worlds of RPGs, any one of those could be taken very seriously. Mm-hmm. They are not taken very seriously in Chrono Cross. They are joke characters, and there's enough room for that.
For sure. I mean, you think about Final Fantasy as a franchise, there are tons of characters that are considered to be comic relief or goofs. Like, I don't think Wakka was a joke character per se. He's definitely a racially insensitive character, but that's a whole other story.
I think he was meant to be serious.
But mostly meant to be serious, but kind of comes off as oafish and a goof. And I think ultimately Final Fantasy is full of diverse characters. You could easily assume that the Moogle character in 6 would be a joke. But he's not. He is a very good and interesting character that you can completely miss, I believe, especially in the second half.
Yeah, you can absolutely completely skip him. He actually has a little bit of sadness to him that got translated out.
Oh, no.
Because when you can recruit him in the second half of the game, whether you got him in the first half or not, you find him in the cave in Narsht, in the first city, where you first encounter the Moogles when you do. And he is staring at the wall. And you go and you talk to him, and for whatever the storyline is for you, he's like, yeah, I'll come with you. And if you search the spot he was looking, you find an item, this really great item called the Moogle Charm, that only he can equip, that if he's in the lead of the party, you don't get random encounters. Super cool. The original name for it wasn't the Moogle Charm, it was the name of who is sort of hinted to be Mog's girlfriend.
Oh.
It's like Mururu or something like that, who was in the same party Mog was in when you first encounter them, and there's no other Moogles in the cave.
Oh.
And so there's just kind of he's just being sad in the corner, and you find him, it's like, yeah, come on, let's go save the world. Great idea. Now, the joke character from there actually, the one that is definitively a joke and one that is arguable, the inarguable one is Umaro.
Right.
The Yeti that when you recruit Mog, depending on circumstance, he's like, hey, I know a guy. Let's go get a guy. And it's a freaking Sasquatch.
Yep.
You can't control him. You can't equip anything on him unless you glitch. And you can give him a couple of relics that you don't control him. You just give him more options. And the other one is Gogo, the mime that you find in a very weird way that is almost there as an homage to the previous Final Fantasy. Because there was a Go-Go there who was a mime, who could do all the crazy imitation stuff. And that's one where you can argue about whether or not it's a joke, because a little bit of it is a reference. And Final Fantasy's full of those. And often joke characters can be references. But it's also, Go-Go's stats suck. Go-Go is not a strong character by the numbers. But by the nature of being a mime, you can equip Go-Go with the special menu abilities of any other character. Everybody has their own special thing that they can do. Whether it's stealing, whether it's turning into this magical being, whether it's absorbing magic attacks, using heavy machinery, awesome fighting game moves. You can just be like, yeah, I'll pick 3 of those. Are you going to do them well? No, but now you got 2 people who can do them. It is a little bit odd and ridiculous. So that's one where, it begs the question and it questions the boundaries a little bit. I would say Umaro is a joke, though.
Yeah, for sure. And that said, I'd be remiss if we didn't even mention, even though I can't even go into specifics, is there have been video games made about Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! And a bunch of other things, Duel Masters. And there are definitely gag cards in those series, especially in Magic. In the physical card game, several series, Unglued and Unhinged, are full sets of joke cards.
Oh, yeah.
And like, card games always have joke and gag cards that tons of people spend too much time creating killer decks around. And it's brilliant. And like, I think those are cards that are designed by the designers who want to have fun. They may have some strategy to it, but for the most part, they're making fun things that people just go galaxy brain and create these awesome decks that utilize these cards in probably ways that those designers never even imagined.
Well, that's the fun of it. And also part of it, well, there are some excellent articles and bits that really get into this. Mark Rosewater, who works for Wizards of the Coast, designed for Magic the Gathering, has some excellent articles about this. And there's actually a design philosophy in terms of making new Magic the Gathering sets. This is an old article, so things that have been debunked, moved on, call me out on it. But they design for 3 imaginary players, and they have named them Spike, Johnny, and Timmy. Spike wants the strongest cards, the best, most efficient use kind of thing. Johnny is, I have some cool ideas, and I see how this kind of mixes with this, and I don't need to win all the time. Spike needs to win. Johnny needs to pull off the cool idea that they found. The sort of person who would look at a card like Donate, that all it does is you give one of your cards to another player. Why would I do that? Well, I'm going to find something that has something cool happen when it enters play and bad when it leaves play. Cool. I'm going to give that to them. That's a Johnny move. And then Timmy just likes the big monsters and wants to pull out the big monsters. Doesn't need to win, but did I summon the huge thing?
Right.
Did I get to do the big thing? Cool. I am oversimplifying it and paraphrasing. But basically, a Johnny is probably your best bet for the sort of player that would say, I am going to win with Pichu.
Yeah.
I need to win with Dan Hibiki at his weakest. That needs to have some fun with that and needs to just plays the thing because they want to play the thing. So, yeah, large rosters and, so many digital card games that have massive card lists. Yeah, they absolutely design for all of these different ideas and people. And I imagine there's been so many like new facets on that trifecta of players. Again, that's an article I've known for like 10 years, something like that. God, what is time? But there's definitely someone that just goes, I'm going to win with the dumbest thing possible. And they deserve to. They deserve to try.
For sure. And I know that there are gag characters we're missing. Jeff and I obviously have not played every game in existence. And so there's definitely going to be stuff we've missed. I am curious, Jeff, if you have a favorite gag character. I have to say, for me, my favorite gag character, in my heart of hearts, was a gag when he debuted in the anime he's from. And then, thankfully, in every game he's appeared in, he's also been a gag. And that's, of course, Mr. Satan, a.k.a. Hercule. Hercule, notably in the Dragon Ball Z Budokai series and Tenkaichi games, plays like a Dan Hibiki of the Dragon Ball Z games. Like, he's goofy, barely has moves, is not very good, but you could get really good with him. Famously, in Legacy of Goku 2, which was a Game Boy Advance game that followed the Saiyan saga, essentially, like went through all of the different sagas within the original run of Dragon Ball Z, the second game follows the Cell games. When Goku dies, you can play as him. And if you level him to 50 and then beat the game, instead of seeing the usual stuff that they would do, summon the dragon, bring Goku back, he's just on a talk show talking about how awesome he is. Like, I love how goofy this character is, who then in later episodes of Dragon Ball Z, in Dragon Ball GT, and in some other stuff, gets those heartfelt moments, gets to make the right decision, gets to be a fully fledged character, even though he was absolutely introduced as a gag. And I love when gag characters get to do that, get to have that heart moment, get to grow as characters. But in the video game incarnations of him, he's just an absolute ridiculous joke and is awful, and I love him the more for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is what lets us love those characters all the more. You're absolutely right. When they get those moments of genuine emotion where, sometimes you're not allowed that in a game, but other times, if everyone gets a little time for story, let them have something nice. Why not? I'm trying to think, what is my favorite joke character? What is my favorite gag? I kind of love, and we haven't had a chance to talk about them. I think probably my favorites are the
sort of gag characters from the Castlevania games.
There's
Where-
a bunch too.
Yeah, there are a ton of them. In the Metroidvania games, you can usually get to a point where you enter a name at the beginning, and that will let you play as a different character. Sometimes that lets you, in Symphony of the Night, where you play as Alucard, this lets you play as Richter Belmont, which is a lot of fun. Richter Belmont, not a joke character.
No.
And there are moments in some of the games where you can wear stuff or do things or equip a certain thing that turns you into a bit of a joke. I think it's Circle of the Moon where you can turn into a skeleton that takes only one hit to die, and all it does is throw bones.
Yep.
Every now and then it throws a giant bone that does max damage. But probably my favorite out of all of those is the axe armor from Castlevania Portrait of Ruin.
Yeah.
You can play it the entire time. It has next to no jump. It can do the big crazy floaty jumps so you can travel places, but it just it runs. It has a single arc of the axe. It can't equip anything. Have fun.
Yeah.
Go be weird axe thing. And it's just something so stupid. And that's a game that you can just blast through if you know what you're doing. So I have a lot of fun being the axe armor. And it's been a long time since I've beaten the game with axe armor, but God, is it fun.
Yeah.
It's very stupid.
I think that, look, the highest compliment I can pay anybody I love is calling them a complete buffoon and an idiot. That's
Yes.
the highest form of compliment to me because I love stupid, ridiculous stuff. And we didn't even get into talking about how characters are considered a joke, but then, there are tons of characters we missed. We didn't mention a word about Big the Cat, a character who absolutely was not designed as a joke, but his gameplay sure was, And
Are you talking about the greatest video game character ever with the most heart-pounding gameplay of all time? Big the Cat? Yes, exactly.
There are so many of these characters that we could talk about. We can probably do another episode on this at some point, but we would love to know what your thoughts are. Do you have favorite joke characters? If you do, why? Do you get serious with those joke characters like the Dan Hibickis of the world? Tell us, because I think that the best thing about gaming is that, like in other medium as well, there's a diversity to comedy. There's no one way to do a joke or tell a joke or create a joke character. And there's been so many over the years. And I'm just curious if our listeners have favorites.
Yeah. Do you have favorite genres where joke characters can show up? Is it difficult to find a joke character in Smash Brothers because it's got such levity to it? Do you enjoy when horror games have utterly bonkers joke characters? Is that what does it for you? What gameplay experiences, what characters are the ones that give you the most joy? Do you want to see more of them? What joke characters do you miss? We want to know about all of these, and we want to hear from you about it. You can let us know on Twitter, through email, Instagram, Fun and Games Pod, across all of those. You can go to certainpov.com and check out previous episodes of this podcast, side quests, and all the other fantastic Certain POV shows that we have, as well as a permanent invite link to our Discord, where you can also let us know these things. And then we could definitely have a lot of GIF-offs about these characters. And I feel like this is a topic that needs a lot of GIFs.
I would agree. If there was a topic on this show that required GIFing, it would be this one. Also, of course, we would love if you could rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice, especially Apple Podcasts, because the reviews there and the star ratings help us reach new listeners. It gets us featured, depending on how many reviews we can get. We do read every review and email, so please keep them coming. And as Geoff said, you can reach us in a ton of different places. If there are topics you want us to talk about, if there are specific people that you would love to connect us with, we've had folks online connect us with incredible guests, please let us know. We are always looking for ways to expand the show and create the stuff that y'all want to hear us talk about.
Yeah, please do not hesitate to reach out. We love hearing from all of you. And if this episode is any indication, we take silliness very seriously and serious things with a big grain of salt. And we enjoy when you do as well, because at the end of the day, this is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt A.K. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Hey, Nerf herders.
You sure you want to go with that?
Hey, everyone.
There we go. More inviting.
Have you ever had a movie that you really wanted to love, but something holds you back?
Or one that you did love in spite of a flaw?
Well, I'm Case Aiken.
And I'm Sam Alisea.
And on Another Pass, we sit down with cool guests to look at movies that we find fascinating.
But flawed.
And we try to imagine what could have been done when they were made to give them that little push.
We're not experts. We just believe in criticism.
Constructive criticism.
Sure.
So come take another pass at some movies with us.
And every now and then, we can celebrate movies that did it on their own, too.
You can find us at certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Pass it on.
CPOV.
CertainPOV.com.